Let's take a look. There's the latest. So our winds are 155 here. It's moving west at 12, the pressure 925, tracking along the north coast of Cuba now. Looks like it's a little farther south track. And then that turn Saturday afternoon, there's 155-mile-an-hour winds, 2 miles an hour stronger, and it'll be a Category 5 hurricane moving across the Keys after that, intensifying a little bit. We have a 5 here. It doesn't take much. When you're a strong Category 4 hurricane, just a bump of 5 miles an hour, you're up to a Category 5. If this occurs, this is only the 4th time in U.S. history that we've had a Category 5 hurricane make landfall in the U.S. The other 3, Andrew, the 1935 hurricane, which made a landfall in this area, and Camille in '69. So there's Sunday, 2 p.m., and you can see this track is on the western side of the lake, well west, almost Fort Myers now, Category 4. With winds around 140, so this is the peak weather for our area, and obviously the west coast would be Saturday afternoon through about mid-evening, and then tracking up just west of Tampa, just east of Tampa, I mean just east, and then after that moving up very quickly into Georgia and the Carolinas. Let's take a look at that one more time. This is pretty important. So let's take a look at that track one more time. So our winds are 155, a powerful Category 4, almost a Category 5 hurricane tracking along the north coast of Cuba. There's that turn Saturday afternoon, and then a landfall and it intensifying to a Category 5, 160, Sunday morning. A landfall just south of Fort Myers in the Naples area. At 2 p.m. Sunday, there's the position. So that would be roughly the landfall timing, 145 miles an hour, and then working its way north. You'll notice that actually technically at landfall, at least here, maybe in the Keys it makes a landfall as a 5. Right now the official forecast has a 4 as it moves in just south of Naples. And then we have a storm that tracks just to the east of Tampa Sunday evening, and then into Monday and Tuesday it's up around Atlanta as still a tropical storm. Way up there, pretty impressive, but because it's so strong that it can hold at least some of its structure as it moves up into Georgia. Here are the computer model tracks this afternoon, and truly these are just in such fantastic agreement. There's the official forecast track, this line right here, so just to the east of Fort Myers and just to the south a landfall, and likely a landfall in the Florida Keys. Looking at this, just kind of eyeballing, it looks like the middle Keys, and then working at maybe Marathon area, and then working its way up just east of Tampa Sunday night and Monday, and then racing up toward the Carolinas. Now the watches and warnings in place at this point. This map takes a few minutes sometimes to update, and because we're right at 5 o'clock, these may have changed a little bit. Maybe James, you can check them for me, but this was what we were looking at earlier too, with the hurricane warning from Palm Beach County south into the Keys, and then back on the west coast just south of Fort Myers, and the hurricane watch all the way up through Fort Myers into Tampa, and a hurricane watch on the east coast, our area, from pretty much Jupiter north up all the way into Vero and Sebastian. Yeah. All right, so this has changed. This map, because of the products, it uses products from the Hurricane Center, and some products are delayed. And this one now has a hurricane warning all the way up through the Treasure Coast, all the way up into Sebastian. So Sebastian Inlet, all the way down through Miami and the Keys, hurricane warning, and then up toward the west coast too. And actually,
now hurricane watch all the way up the west coast to the Suwannee River.
Okay, which is up around the Big Bend area and the Panhandle. Is there, James, is there a hurricane warning up toward Tampa now? Check that out. So our warnings have been expanded. So a hurricane warning for the entire viewing area now from Sebastian, Vero, down all the way through West Palm and Boca and all the way back down
to Anna Maria Island.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A warning
too.
Up to Anna Maria Island.
Okay, so Anna Maria Island all the way down through Fort Myers and the Sarasota area. Now we have a hurricane warning on this side. It's amazing how much real estate this hurricane is going to impact simply because it's so large and the wind field stretches out so far. A little bit of encouraging news. We're pretty much guaranteed to get some weather here. Tropical storm force winds, which are 39 miles an hour stronger. We're still up in the high 80s to low 90% for that. And that would happen Saturday night, likely around 6 to 8 o'clock down around southern Palm Beach. I'll show you the timing in a second, and then it spreads north Saturday night, early Sunday. But look at the numbers now these are hurricane probability numbers, and these are the chance of seeing hurricane force winds through the weekend in our area. These numbers have dropped in a big, big way. Last night at 11 o'clock, these were around 45 to 50%. Almost, I believe it was about 47% in Palm Beach County. Now we're at 19. So we have a 1 in 5 chance of seeing hurricane force winds here. And look at the core. This follows along the official track at 5 o'clock. So because that track continues to shift west, we have the highest probabilities to the west. Now I will caution you, because it's easy to jump on this and get very excited, because obviously this is encouraging for us to get in less of probability, but the track could still shift back to the east again. I want to go back to that official forecast, and we'll take a look at the error cone. One more graphic. Take a look at the error cone as it works into South Florida. So there's the northeastern tip of Cuba. Here comes the Category 5, maybe a Category 5 landfall in the Keys, and then working up, and this track is shifted at 5 o'clock a little farther to the west. Look at right at the coastline there. Now the eastern side of the error cone is lined up now right along the coast of not only Palm Beach County, but because of the shape of this cone, all the way up through the Treasure Coast. And at 11 o'clock and all afternoon, that error cone was about 15, 20 miles offshore. So that's nice to see too, that cone has shifted, and more now in the Gulf of Mexico. And if you think back about 2 and 3 days ago, it was going in the opposite direction. This side of the cone was getting very close to the Gulf of Mexico, the coastline, and this was pushing out. Now we have a track that shifted back to the west again. And I caution you that we could still see a track, because we're still in the error cone. And what does this error cone mean? It doesn't mean that the chance for tropical storm and hurricane force wind stops here. This is a cone that says the eye of this hurricane could come right here. There's still that probability. And so the hurricane force winds would actually stretch out about 50 miles past that. It's not that the chance stops here for the winds. It stops out here, and that the eye could track here. So we're still in this cone, all of the viewing area, but it is getting a little bit smaller, and it's nice to see. It's a nice trend to see during the day. So it's a trend that hopefully will continue, and the computer model tracks tonight certainly are lined up. High confidence in those tonight, but any shift back, let's say like we saw last night, right over the lake, and then we're back into stronger winds once again, and that's definitely a scenario that could play out at 11 o'clock, no question about it. So this map is still waiting to be updated, but hurricane warning across our entire viewing area and all the way back up through Anna Maria Island on the west coast of Florida, and of course the Florida Keys, where the official forecast has a Category 5 hurricane making landfall Saturday night, early Sunday. About an 80 to 90% chance of tropical storm force winds here on the weekend, 39 miles an hour or stronger. And the chance now, the probability of hurricane force winds has dropped to roughly 20% in Palm Beach County and a little less than 30% on the Treasure Coast. This is a nice drop, like half of what we were dealing with last night. Now here's the timing for those winds. Saturday starts off with more than likely a little bit of sunshine, but the winds, the tropical storm force winds, here's the field here in yellow, working across southern Palm Beach County, Boca, Delray, Boynton, Lake Worth, Wellington eventually. Early evening, there's 8:30 and it's already up around Lake Worth, and then across the leading edges now into Martin County, through Martin County at about 3:30 in the morning. So we're looking at about sunrise for those winds picking up across the rest of the Treasure Coast. And the core of the hurricane and our strongest winds, our peak rain, our peak weather here will be Sunday, late afternoon through the mid-evening with the current timing. Actually, the timing looks like it's changed a little bit because that turn now is Saturday afternoon. Earlier, it was more Saturday evening. So the timing always changes as hurricanes approach Florida. It's just one of those things that happens. You know, they speed up, they slow down. The computer models, some of them are picking up on faster speed with the hurricane. You know, a difference of 2 or 3 miles an hour when you're out 1,000 miles means the difference of a day by the time it arrives here. So that's why we have that big flexibility in the times of arrival. But right now it looks like peak weather here would be Sunday afternoon and evening. So we are looking for the rest of today and tonight, some rain squalls. Won't be a bad evening. Tomorrow morning starts off good. The weather starts to go downhill. We get the outer fringes of the Irma working in during the day. Some rough seas develop and rain squalls, the outer feeder bands of the storm. For Saturday night, tropical storm force winds develop. I just showed you the timeline. It'll be early to mid-evening in Palm Beach County, then overnight, Saturday night into Sunday for the Treasure Coast. And by dawn, we're looking at the entire area with tropical storm force winds, torrential downpours. And at this point on this track, we have still about a 1 in 5 chance of seeing hurricane conditions, and it's higher, I should caution, higher around the lake too, because the lake is closer, and the lake is our viewing area. Belle Glade, Okeechobee, those areas have a higher risk, and I'll actually adjust that map. I'll get David to do it in a second, showing the probability of tropical storm and hurricane force winds around Lake Okeechobee, because they will be higher because they're closer to the storm track. We're looking at some heavy rainfall. There is a flooding potential. With the track of this, more than likely 5 to 8 inches of rain, but we could see over 10 in spots. And we'll see the peak storm surge. And there's been a lot of talk about the storm surge, but as the track continues to shift west, we get out of the larger threat with the storm surge. And I'll say it one more time, I caution you, we could at 11 o'clock in the evening model runs see a shift back to the east. So that's always a concern. We are still in the error cone, but it's, you know, it's nice to see these track changes.
Steve, bottom line though, a catastrophe in the making for millions of our fellow Floridians.
Absolutely.
The question remains, which millions of our fellow Floridians? Talk about some of the storm surge issues they'll have on the West Coast. Tampa's an area that sometimes, depending on this track, has its own problems with flooding, with things far less severe than this. And of course, Kelly, you and I were talking about human nature is to say maybe less impact for us, but no way, trite as this phrase sounds, can we let our guard down based on all we know.
The most susceptible area in Florida's storm surge is actually Fort Myers, where some of that storm surge can work in easily miles away from the coast. That's the riskiest area, but Tampa Bay, storm surge can also work in. We've seen it in even some weak tropical storms around the Tampa area, above 10 feet for the storm surge. Now there is a little bit of help with the track of this, because the track is just to the east of Tampa and just to the east of Fort Myers. There's not the big fetch over the Gulf of Mexico pushing that water up against the coastline. The worst case scenario would be a storm track that comes in like this. Those late season storms that work in pretty much from the Caribbean and the Yucatan and then work up. That's where the highest risk is for storm surge. They will see some here, but not a worst case scenario.